For the longest time, we've all been told that a high IQ is the golden ticket, right? The ultimate key to success. But what if that's not the whole picture? What if there's another kind of intelligence? Something that actually matters even more?
So just think about it for a second. If it's not just about raw brain power, then what is it? What's that secret sauce that separates the top performers from everyone else? At work, in their relationships, in everything. Well, it turns out the answer is something we all deal with every single day.
And that secret ingredient, it's called emotional intelligence. Yep, it's a skill that goes way beyond your typical book smarts, something no standardized test could ever really measure. So today, let's break down exactly what it is and why it's such an absolute game changer.
Okay, so what is emotional intelligence, or EQ, really? Well, simply put, it's your ability to tune into your own emotions and manage them, while also being able to read and influence the emotions of the people around you. Think of it this way. It's not about being smarter, it's about being smarter with feelings.
Now, whenever an idea like this gets popular, a bunch of myths start floating around. And EQ is definitely no exception. So before we dive any deeper, let's just clear the air on a few things. All right, let's bust some of the biggest myths. First up, you're either born with it or you're not. Totally false. The reality is that EQ is a skill you can build, just like a muscle at the gym. Second, it's just about being nice. Nope, it's a huge range of skills, including really tough ones like self-control. And finally, the idea that it's a soft skill. Please, mastering your emotions is one of the hardest and most valuable things you can do. And that brings us to the main event, the big showdown, EQ versus IQ. For decades, we've put IQ up on this pedestal, but a whole lot of research is starting to show that we may have been backing the wrong horse this whole time. So how are they different? Well, think of IQ as your brain's raw processing power. It's logic, problem-solving, abstract thinking. It's pretty much an individual skill. EQ, on the other hand, is all about emotional and social skills. It's your self-awareness, how you manage yourself, and your ability to navigate relationships. It's a relational skill, and that difference is absolutely crucial. If you still think book smarts are everything, get this. Research from the Carnegie Institute of Technology dropped a bombshell. It found that only 15%, just 15% of a person's financial success comes from their technical knowledge or IQ.
So you gotta be asking, where does the other 85% come from? Well, that same study said it's due to skills in human engineering, which is really just a fancy way of saying personality, communication, and leadership. In short, it all comes down to emotional intelligence.
And the real world is definitely catching on. In a big career builder survey, a whopping 75% of hiring managers said they'd rather promote an employee with high EQ than one with high IQ. Why? Because they know who can stay calm under pressure and who can actually resolve conflicts, skills that an IQ test just can't tell you about.
Okay, to really get why EQ is so incredibly powerful, we need to geek out for a minute. Let's look under the hood at our own biology, at how our brains are literally hardwired to handle emotions. I'm sure you know the feeling. Someone says one wrong thing in a meeting and you just see red. Or you get a critical email and your heart starts hammering in your chest. That immediate, overwhelming reaction, it has a name. Daniel Goleman, the author who made emotional intelligence famous, calls it an amygdala hijack. So here's what's happening inside your head. When you perceive a threat, the signal hits a part of your brain that acts like a traffic controller. It sends the signal down two roads at once. One is the long, scenic route to your rational thinking brain, but the other is a super-fast expressway straight to your amygdala, your brain's emotional smoke detector. That alarm gets the message first, milliseconds before your thinking brain even knows what's up. And if it senses danger, bam, it triggers a fight, flight, or freeze response and basically hijacks your ability to think clearly.
And this is exactly why it's so important in our everyday interactions. When you're dealing with someone who's in the middle of their own amygdala hijack, your self-control is the only thing that's going to stop you from getting hijacked right along with them. That right there, that's the essence of managing emotions.
And this is more critical now than ever. In our super digital world, we often miss out on those rich, face-to-face interactions. We end up in this sort of electronic cocoon, which can leave us feeling isolated and even more vulnerable to these emotional hijacks. So really, EQ is an essential modern survival skill.
So what does it actually look like when EQ is a little underdeveloped? And hey, this isn't about pointing fingers or passing judgment. It's just a tool for self-awareness, because you can't work on something if you don't even know it's there, right?
So some common signs might be things like frequent emotional outbursts, or maybe being a little clueless about how other people are feeling. Having a hard time maintaining friendships is another one. Other signs? Reacting in ways that are just kind of off for the situation. Getting defensive super easily, or dismissing other people's feelings. Again, if any of this sounds familiar, it's not a bad thing. It's just a signpost for where you can grow.
All right, now for the best part, the really good news. Remember what we said at the beginning? Emotional intelligence isn't fixed. It's a skill you can actively develop. So let's get practical and talk about how to turn that awareness into action.
Here are 4 simple, powerful steps you can start practicing today from the experts at the Gottman Institute. Number 1, just pause. Before you react, take a breath and ask yourself, what am I actually feeling right now? Number 2, listen to understand, not to argue back. Try to really hear where the other person is coming from. 3, validate before you problem solve. A simple, I can see why you'd feel that way, can be incredibly powerful. And finally, number 4, if things get too heated, take a break. A short timeout can stop that amygdala hijack right in its tracks.
At the end of the day, this is why this practice matters so much. As Daniel Goleman said, if you can't manage your emotions and you can't build effective relationships, it really doesn't matter how smart you are. You're just not going to get very far.
So if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this. Your EQ is not a destination you arrive at. It's a lifelong practice. Every conversation, every single interaction is an opportunity to get stronger, to build that muscle, and to become more effective in every part of your life.
So we'll leave you with this thought. For the most part, your IQ is what it is. It's pretty much set. But your EQ? That's a different story. It's entirely in your hands. It's a choice you get to make every single day. The only question is, what will you choose to build? Thanks for joining this explainer.